Hey, Status D, please like and subscribe. Please click on the deck heroes icon. Click on subscribe. It's 100% free. Blood in, blood out. And also don't forget to click on the notifications just so that you don't miss any amazing content. All right, I've had one viewing of this particular video. Never heard of Tonya before in my life. In essence, it's a video about younger ladies and the older men that sometimes try to date them. There's a massive difference in the opinion between myself and the host and the girl. Very interesting. But I say this is part of the reason why I'm doing these videos, because I think there's some women of all ages who need a man's perspective. I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong, but at least a man's perspective, just so they could know. But also, I think there's definitely a massive portion of ladies trying to guess the male lived experience and just getting it blatantly wrong. So that's why I'm saying what I just said a minute ago. It'd be almost like me trying to guess the female lived experience. I'd be equally clueless at the end of the day. But anyway, this is a great video. Stay tuned. Let's go.
And no old took the life out of me. No, I'm not doing it.
Why?
You want to hoe around in your 20s and your 30s. Now you're 50 and you're single because you was hoeing around all around town, community. And now you want to get somebody that's younger because they less used. You're used. So you're used.
Just a second. 50 and single. Now she looks, how old does she look? Top left. It's probably, listen, there's a lot of things I'm going to say later, right? But I do need to kind of, now that I know he's 50 and she's in her 20s, it's like double her age. So like the same age as her dad. Right, so I think what I'm going to say later still holds, but there will be something a little bit weird about a girl, I'll just rewind to the start, about a girl dating somebody who's the same age or potentially older than her dad. But that said, I'm going to say the later bit now. I think that one of the core things that ladies need to be focused on is the stage of life of the man and what he brings to the table. And being older has got absolutely zero to do with it. And it doesn't happen the same way in reverse due to sexual marketplace value. And a woman's sexual marketplace value is based on that biological clock to a massive extent. And it's just the way it is. And it doesn't apply for men because we don't have one. And that's not to say that over time things can't go wrong for men, you know, in terms of testosterone, which the host talks about a little bit later. You know, I was going to joke and say I don't know if that happens for Caribbeans. You know what I mean? Most Caribbean men of all ages, I know, and I know it doesn't mean everybody, but you know, I mean, they keep going until like a Duracell battery, like so. And I say it's not exclusive to the Caribbeans, trust me. So yeah, but it will be to some. You know, I mean, over time you may get medical complications. Yes, definitely. But for women, listen, we need to get away from older ladies trying to convince younger ladies that they've got forever to look for something when it's just not the case. It's just not the case. And when somebody's in their prime and in their youth, the thing that I will agree on is, you know, definitely be selective, but do not kick that can down the line. And also, obviously, whoever's watching this, I don't know you. You can do whatever the hell you want to do. But as a man who's in his 40s, just that voice of experience, it doesn't make any difference to my life about, you know what I mean, the choices that you make. But I'd say if I had a daughter and you're in your 20s or you're in your 30s watching this, I would say prioritize this now. Because the other side of that wall, if it's based on your biological clock, is an absolute, and it's tragic.
And no old took the life out of me. No, I'm
That's all I wanted to say. Let's have one last listen, and we'll go right through.
not doing it.
Why?
You want to hoe around in your 20s and your 30s. Now you're 50 and you're single because you was hoeing around all around town, community. And now you want to get somebody that's younger because they less used. You're used. So you're used up and you want somebody less used up. No, go ahead and get your match. They be out here, they be having several baby mothers, several kids, but want a girl with no kids. No, get your match.
Why?
And this is the part that gets me.
Sorry, the one thing that she did say is another good point. You don't want somebody she had several baby mothers, several kids, and as a woman, listen, you got to think about the situation that you're going into, whether you're happy to go into it, right? So yeah, that's not a good sign. You know, if you don't have kids, going in with somebody who's got any kids at all, number one. And if he's got several kids or several baby mothers, then I guess that is a red flag. I mean, if he's 50, then that, you know, that's a definite, not possibility, probability, probability. But also you need to look at things like, well, some women are comfortable kind of having that kind of infrequent contact with somebody else's kids just because they've got that natural inclination, and others don't. You've got to know yourself. With most men or a lot of men, that may be very infrequent contact, you know, due to court orders and kind of like relationship kind of with an ex of any sort. You can imagine that probably going, you know what I mean? So if he hardly ever sees his kids, then that's one thing to consider. But you know what I mean? It's obviously lesser of an impact. But if you're getting towards 50-50 with the previous partner or more, then you need to obviously factor in about whether that is something that you want to take on, or that would be something that you're happy with, and how supportive and considerate he is of your point of view, or whether he's just saying, oh, he's a bag of baggage and, you know what I mean, let's go on with it. But but again, in all those scenarios, it just depends on being bothered enough to find out what the real circumstances are, what the real implications are for your life going forwards, and whether you'll be happy with it. And either you are or you aren't.
He's like, why? Look at him. How old do you think he is? He's every bit of 40 something at least, right? And this young woman is on the couch saying, I'm not going to let an old man F the life out of me or suck the life out of me. And he's like, why? Why would a person not want to have the life sucked or effed out of them? Come on. And she's telling you right there why, and he's still in denial. The crazy part about it is that they see, you know, grown, mature women like me and or you out there, because my audience is skews upwards. They see us out there and they act like we don't know what it's like to be a young lady in our 20s. I remember what it is.
Yeah, you know what it's like to be a young woman in your 20s, but you give bad advice. So you haven't learned from it. That's the problem. I say we only saw the shortest clip, so we don't know what he said before now. She might have been throwing out that age about him being 50 and having multiple kids, multiple baby mamas. Obviously, the lead up to it is that he's not, the short story is, and the lead up to it is, he's put himself forwards and he's not somebody to be taken seriously. We move on. That's it. That's the end of the video. But you know it's not. So but it's a very interesting video. So stick with it, because you know the debate continues.
But I thought of men who were even in their 30s when I was in my 20s. I know how grotesque I thought it was. So it's like, if your whole mating strategy.
She just made a point now, which refers back to something I said. I'll just be very quick. When she was in her 20s, the thought of people in their 30s, let alone their 40s, was grotesque. And that is something to do with how you are raised. And it's possibly something to do with how she is raised. Really is. If you're in your 20s and say, I have actually been a 20-odd-year-old man, it's beyond the hypothesis. If you're in your 20s, she's in her 20s, but she's up against a body clock, which is actually quite short, and definitely extremely short by comparison. As a 20-odd-year-old man, when I was in my 20s, most men in their 20s are not raised to be, and not physically or hormonally in that zone to be tied down into a relationship. The facts. So in your 20s, if you manage to catch somebody who's in that kind of zone, then you're sort of lucky. I mean, of course, they're going to be looked to be kind of settled and therefore maybe boring, and therefore would be possibly overlooked by a woman in their 20s, because they're looking for that the excitement type of thing. You know what I mean? So if she's looking for that excitement type of thing, she might as well have a little bit of fun with this 50-year-old, depending on his financial standing, and maybe, you know, I mean, she'll grow and learn from an older person. Or she can mess around with these other guys in their 20s at the same stage of life in terms of age, but their sexual market value also quite similar at the time, but really in terms of the future life choices that they need to make, completely different. Long story short, in her 20s, she should not really be messing and wasting that time, burning that valuable time on people who will never be ready, or low odds to be ready. Somebody in her early 20s should really be looking minimum somebody late 20s, probably in their 30s. Somebody's got their life together. Somebody you can say, okay, listen, she gets on with him, he's positive, he's going to treat her right, and he's got his kind of things together. He's had like, what, 10 years? Well, no, from 18, he's had like 12, 13, 14 years to get a half decent job or get his education out the way, get all his wild oats and get all that stupidness out the way. And this is where he is now, and you're kind of meeting him, and you are, again, either in the same place where you want to have the potential of a long-term relationship. So you've got the time as a lady to get to know him and then decide, okay, yeah, there's no real red flags. There's a positive, mutually kind of loving relationship, you know what I mean? And yeah, okay, yeah, let's see where this thing goes. Or to let him go and you've got time to find somebody else. You know what I mean? Don't waste that time on any time wasters if you're literally in that zone where you actually want to meet somebody to take it forwards. And if somebody happens to be in their 40s and they got their shit together, I'm in my 40s, I'm in a relationship. I'm not actually trying to put myself forward online, but I can meet people of any age, and I always have. You know what I mean? It's about how you present at the end of the day in an attractive manner is an attractive man at any age. And trust me, in relation to where I was in my 30s, I'm much more kind of advanced in every single regard, and where I was in my 20s, where there was just a life of uncertainty and trying to make my way. In my 40s, I've made my way. So if I was to meet this girl right now, it would literally be a case where, in all likelihood, she's still in that trying to make her way phase of life. And if she wanted that kind of stability with somebody who's financially secure, somebody who looks after his body, somebody who's, quite handsome, if I say so myself, then why wouldn't she? All depends on the candidate.
Who is dumb, desperate, or disempowered enough to have to give you a chance. I mean, this is what many of these men want. This is how the whole Passport Bros movement was born. You women here want too much. You're not willing to be my unending, unpaid slave. Let me go across and overseas and find a woman who doesn't have as much as you do, who doesn't have the privileges that you do, and let me be able to give her the bare minimum. I still remember when those girls were coming out telling us that we need to mind our business. And I'm like, oh, go ahead. I want that for you. Go ahead. If this
What the men will look, okay, again, this is where a woman who's guessing what's in a man's mind and won't take accountability for poor choices which have kind of restricted options and trying to advise other women who will repeat the same mistakes. As a man, I'm not a passport bro, not a passport bro, but as a man, I understand, and I've watched a lot of videos, what they're actually looking for. I get, listen, what you should do if you're going to talk about passport bros and you're not a man is look at those passport bro videos, not the ones by women or some kind of, what's it called, what's that guy now, cheating on his wife? All these kind of suck up kind of men. You know what I mean? Just actually look at the actual channels and see the positive relationships that they get from this and what they're actually looking for. They're looking for somebody who is willing to accept a traditional role with him as provider and her as the nurturer of a future child in a positive, loving relationship. Who's bothered about her appearance, but also she'd need to be of an age where, you know what I mean, she hasn't hit that biological clock. So it's all, and as I say, she's actually interested in having, yeah, that kind of just not having a dysfunctional, toxic, oppositional relationship where somebody's taken on so many male traits and male perspectives that you don't want to be with another man in a relationship. You know what I mean? Somebody who's comfortable in her feminine and wants to accept a more feminine role. So and it's perfectly fine not to want to be any of those things. But the passport bros who are looking for those things, that's why they have to go elsewhere. One thing I will say as well is I know some guys, I don't know any passport bros, but there's actually quite a few guys I know who've been single for years. And then what they're meant to do? What they're meant to do? Like just wait. You know what I mean? If at the end of the day the women in your home country don't want to know you, then you got to look further afield. So you got to try. I mean, it's quite extreme to go abroad, but you try different techniques and different techniques and different things. And if it's not working for you, then you may well feel that you need to go abroad. And if you do, God willing, hopefully everything works out. But it does feel a bit salty. The women who are still here, who've been kind of rejected, it's like, listen, they're so sure they don't want the women that remain. They've gone abroad to find somebody else. And the women that remain are just so salty about it. They can't just say, well, actually, maybe it is something. If they had to go that far, then maybe it was something. No, there's not a hint of that. And I'm just thinking about in reverse, when women try to do it, doesn't quite work out, does it? Most of the time, I'd say most of the time, because again, if you're a man going to get a younger lady and provide for her, that's a traditional role. Now, if you're a woman trying to get a younger man, then there's an imbalance. You know what I mean? There's an obvious economic imbalance. You've got to be willing to finance that guy. But I say innately, it's going to feel quite wrong. And to some extent, there is an element of economic exploitation there in terms of traditional role perspective. You know what I mean? So, long story short, especially if he's a much younger man, he's going to want to escape that economic exploitation at some point, and the whole thing, the whole charade is going to crash down. Whereas a woman who has been raised to want to actually be financially secure and secure in her environment and have whatever provision she needs to raise her future children and devote her time to her kids and her man and her wider family and her friends, that's traditional. We get into traditional roles, and that doesn't sound too bad to me. But anyway, here we go.
What, like, you're not going to listen to the people who have the experience in the situation? Go ahead for it. Go ahead. So he's like, why don't you? And she's like, go find your match.
You want to hoe around in your 20s and your 30s. Now you're 50 and you're single because you was hoeing around all around town, community day. And now you want to get somebody that's younger because they less used. You're used.
And look at his face. He's like, I never considered this before. Look at his face. He looked horrified. These are the people who are supposed to be leaders. Where are you leading anyone? You didn't even have the foresight enough to realize that these young women who have choices and options and are not enslaved, that they're not willingly going to come along and try to be, quote unquote, yours. Young people like other young people. Tight skin looks best on everyone. Over the age of 35, when that testosterone plummets, the muscles don't be muscling like they used to. And I'm talking about all muscles, pun intended, boy. Pun intended, bye. If you catch my drift, you know what I'm talking about. It's not like it was when you were 20. This is why you've got to cultivate yourself as a human being.
So you're used up and you want somebody less used up? No, go ahead and get your match.
Yeah, so it's like, this is why you have to cultivate yourself as a human being so that you have more to offer than a deteriorating commodity. Youth is a commodity that we are all born with, and we exchange that for wisdom.
It's actually really, really different, as I hinted earlier. Very different. I think for women, youth is a primary factor of their sexual market value, and that's why men value it. And it's connected to body clock. It's a primary factor, but it's not the same for men at all. I mean, yeah, she said in her 20s that she was, wasn't interested in 30-year-old men, and that was what's known as a mistake. Now, if he's in his 50s and if the young girl on the left is in her 20s, I would say mid-20s, late 20s, right? And he's 50, then he's in the kind of like daddy age, and that is going to be weird. And no getting around it. But listen, say if that was an Idris or something like that. If that was Idris Elba, do you think she'll be knocking him back? You know what I mean? So again, if he's a more attractive man, if he's financially secure, if he's got a little bit of swag about him, if he's in good physical health, if he could look after, again, we're getting back to the real core now. I mentioned Idris, innit? The real core of how is my life going to pan out from the first minute to the last? Are we in a positive, constructive relationship of mutual interests? You're giving me stuff that I can't get from the current talent pool of people my own age because they're out trying to sleep with the world. And it may well be the same for the people in their late 20s. Maybe it will be the same, who knows, but less likely for men in their 30s. So you know what? I've met a guy and we're the same place at the same time. Let's give it a go. That's what the advice should be.
Experiences, life lessons. But far too many men are like, we don't care about that stuff. All we care about is the one, and we exchange that for wisdom than a deteriorating commodity. Youth is a commodity that we are all born with, and we exchange that for wisdom, experiences, life lessons. But far too many men are like, we don't care about that stuff. All we care about.
I thought that's what she was saying. I think she's trying to say that, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, youth over time may well diminish, but you get life experiences. Again, it's trying to replace the things that men give a shit about with what women want men to give a shit about. Yeah, we want everything that she said plus everything else. If we're looking to have a family, and most men, not all men, because I know a few examples of men who don't want to have families, even if they change their mind at any time, they still could. You know what I mean? But that's just not the way most men think. They want that and the bag of chips. And once they've got their family or they've got a kid or something like that out there in the world, then fair enough. They'll be looking for somebody who's just, the relationship and, positive life experiences type of things. But then that woman has to buy into his setup, you know what I mean, of whatever age she is. So that's the bit that she's missing.
Is the one thing that you had no hand in. Your DNA, that's all we care about. Youth, it's fleeting. But what happens after the youth? And the crazy part about it is, now that I'm becoming older, I mean, this is part of the reason that I'm doing the Renew conference next year, why I'm working on creating a retreat next year, is because as I'm getting older and I'm thinking about quote unquote legacy, I'm thinking about what type of mark I want to leave on this world. How many people can I help? In how many different ways can I be of service to the earth? So it's like, as they get older, instead of thinking about ways in which they can give back to the earth, they're thinking about ways to plunder, how to plunder the youth from young people, how to use them for their resources and use her for her youth and her ignorance and naivete, instead of thinking about ways in which they...
We're not using younger people for their resources. Unless she means only specifically youth. You know what I mean? So it's, I don't know. Say if she said something about tight skin earlier. So yeah, so say she's looking absolutely fabulous. She's bobbing about. Listen, I think when you're younger, right, especially as a woman, as a man, you can be a silver fox. You know what I mean? You can have that grizzly look still. You know what I mean? Look at Jason Statham, right? Jason Statham, the actor. Look at his dating history. You know what I mean? How he looks bald head. I'm a bald head man myself. You know what I mean? And he's just done very well. It's just not the same for women. It's not the same for women at all, sadly. And at that stage, I think a woman's youth is her most valuable resource. You know what I mean? But say she's got to be focused on getting a man who's going to lead to a relationship, a substantive relationship based on positive, settled, stable relationship, not just in itself, but financially and everything else. You know what I mean? So that's what she should be looking for. And that can come at any age. For him to her, he's got time to play the field, you know what I mean? So if he's coming, if what he's bringing is just that kind of good time, then you got to take it for what it is and don't let it kind of disrupt you on your path. You know what I mean? So if you want to have a little dabble, but it's not going to disrupt you from your path, then fair enough. And if you want to completely ignore it because you don't want to be kind of taken off course at all for a minute, fair enough too. That's the advice you should be given, in my point of view, as a man, 40-year-old, a man in his 40s.
Protect the youth, they're looking for ways to go shopping among them, how to pick who it is that they want, the naivest of them all, the prettiest, the youthfulness of them all. Meanwhile, we have all of these incels out here. Do these men care about the young men who have no women? They don't care, because they're 50, 60, 40, 30, shopping from the bunch of 20-something-year-old girls. So who are the 20-something-year-old men supposed to date? Are they supposed to just go to the 16-year-olds? And thus...
Yeah, it's just the way it is. I remember being at college, basically, and you got the kid with the car. You know what I mean? So if they're getting all the women, then who's everybody? That's just what's known as tough shit. That's just known as what's tough luck. But it's not. There's no harm in a man in his early days not being distracted anyway. How's about this? And you may well agree with this. If a man is not distracted in his very early youth, when he'd just be playing the field anyway, and just focus on getting his shit together, getting his education right, getting his career right, and getting, his house and if it's necessary, his car and everything else, just kind of tippity top. He will be that man who's picking from the younger ladies, you know what I mean, that you just described. In the future, he will be that older man picking from the crop. You know what I mean? So he will get his time, and listen, at all stages, he will still date. It's not like it's not like we're trying to say that older men will take exclusively every single woman that's available. You know what I mean? So he will still be able to date if he still tried. I've been that man. You know what I mean? I've lived that life. And say, but then over time, you just get more mature, get more rounded, get more financially secure, more educated, more cultured, and then you're a more attractive proposition because women attract, they mature earlier anyway. So an older man who say let's, for example, 25-year-old man, 21-year-old woman, maturity levels maybe around about the same. Maybe not 21, 22-year-old woman, 25, 26-year-old man, more or less the same, right?
The cycle of abuse continues. This is ridiculous. Look at his face. Why? Why don't you want to have the life effed out of you? It's ridiculous.
Be a part of the live show with thousands of other viewers. Go to Tanya.
All is good. I love these kind of little kind of situation kind of debate type relationship things. I've got a 2-1 in psychology and let's say 40 years of life experience anyway. So please like, subscribe. It's all good fun. I love it. Don't forget to click on the notifications. That is Steve and I'm out.